Okay, the big news last week in CFA. Level 3 exams results for February of 2024 were out. 49% pass rate. Not quite where historically it used to be, about when I say historically, let's say the last, pre-pandemic, the 5 years before pre-pandemic, about mid 50s, 55, 56%. So we're getting there. 13,600 candidates sat in February. We are pleased to see overall pass rate for level 3 candidates of 49%, which sits within the higher range among recent cohorts, that's the recent, and near the 10-year average. Still below, but near the 10-year average. Our analysis of exam results for this group shows that candidates sitting their level 3 exam for the first time performed the best overall 56% pass rate. And that is where the historical average is. Pre-pandemic, if you didn't want to sit for an exam, you couldn't defer. You simply just didn't show up. So when we looked at the pass rates, it was those who sat and wrote the exam. That's where it would be. Those who had deferred, on the other hand, passing rate of 36%. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that you deferred, as I explained in previous videos. I think it has to do with the type of person that will defer as opposed to do the hard thing, which is sacrifice and dig in and get it done. It's easier to defer, and there's nothing about the deferral that says that person will now dig in and do the hard work. If they weren't willing to do the hard work now, they're certainly not going to start once they defer. So this is sort of a self-selection. It is the type of person who does defer, 36%. So, 56, that is not bad. If you did not pass, you'll make a run for August of 2023. And I think that's the reasonable thing to do because you're not starting from zero. It's the same content as February 2024, and if you are a subscriber on our site, you do have a 1 fee to pass. So it doesn't cost you anything to extend the content to August. If you're thinking about February 2025, a couple of things here. There is the core, which is about 70% of what the traditional CFA level 3 is. Portfolio management, if you add the core plus portfolio management, there's your original level 3 content. So if they had never introduced the modules, this would be the continuation of the current level 3. You can select private markets or private wealth management. Don't bother. They're not ready. Especially this one here, private wealth management. It is, you may think that, well, it's mostly narrative, it's going to be easy. It is long, it is boring, it is teaching by lists. Get ready for some heavy memorization and get ready for some inconsistency. This word over here means this. A couple pages later, this word over here means something else. You go to another reading, this same word over here means yet something else altogether. So if you get a question about this term, which is it? I don't know. You have a higher probability of failing this section because of the inconsistencies. It's simply not ready. A couple of years of development, a couple of years of editing to weed out all of the errors, all of the inconsistencies, to streamline the content so that you're not running on 15, 20 pages on something that has absolutely nothing to do with the learning objective yet. End of chapter questions are full of it, so you're left wondering, do the keywords even mean anything anymore? It is not ready. I cannot urge you enough to ignore these. I don't have enough words in my vocabulary to emphasize exactly how I feel about these. Stick with portfolio management. Years of adding and editing and perfecting those readings. They're ready. But these are not. I am, at this point, rather limited in the examples I can give you. Registration opens May 9th for February 2025. I will have a longer video out May 9th laying out my case in more detail because then I can share certain things about the content. All I can share right now is my massive disappointment in it. And having seen it, if I had to choose a level 3, I would be doing portfolio management. Private markets would be way down the list, but it would be second. But it wouldn't just be, okay, well, I'll take that. It would be, all right, I guess. And if I had to take portfolio wealth management, I simply would just not even bother sitting for level 3 again. I'd say, okay, well, I'm done. Thank you. That's how bad it is. Okay, let's remind ourselves of the calendar. May is just around the corner here. Level 1, level 2, you're basically in review now. Level 1, you have 29 days with 28 for review, so you really should be done and entering the review period. For level 2, you got 8 days left. Basically, you're pretty much at the review period's door. So for both level 1 and level 2 for May, you should be wrapped up every reading, at least once every reading, and now entering your review period. If you're writing in August of 2024, you still have 29 days to register for August of 2024. Based on the time that's left, you should be 20 to 30% done. So you should be a quarter of the ways through the content. Level 1, you have 14 weeks. Level 2, you have 15 weeks. Level 3, 12 and a half weeks. That is tight. And for November, still lots of time. However, if you want the early registration, it ends tomorrow. You either do it today or you do it tomorrow, but that's it. So if you say, well, yeah, I'm going to take it in November, but I'll wait till Wednesday, that one day is going to cost you. I think it's like $250 more, $200 or $250 more. But like if you know you're going to do it, do it. You got till the end of the 16th to get it done. It's the 15th today. You can do the math. Level 1 and level 2, 183 days for level 1, 190 days for level 2. Registration opened February 8th. I would say that if you haven't started, you're going to want to consider what your start date is, and that should be within the next couple of weeks that you should be starting. Otherwise, you will run out of time and then you will defer. And that says something about your willingness to put in the appropriate amount of time. So a couple more weeks. Okay, well, I think that does it for our public service announcements. The next segment is Richie and what he's going to do for you level 2 candidates out there. He's going to review a little bit of the reading in FRA regarding pensions, and in doing it, bringing it to the real world and using GE's statements, General Electric statements, to show you some of the calculations and some of the categorizations. And then I will finish this up with a Q&A of last week's comments.
Welcome all, Richie Owens here from markmeldrum.com. Just a quick little video that was born out of a discussion I had with a level 2 retake candidate, somebody who'd seen level 2 in 2023, retaking in 2024, and had heard that defined benefit pension plans are no longer in the curriculum. Not true. It is true that the reading on employee compensation has shifted to focus more on share-based compensation, but defined benefit plans are still in there. However, a lot of the information, a lot of the techniques you would have learned in 2023 are no longer necessary. It's not a focus on total periodic pension cost and so on. But you do still need to be able to read a set of pension disclosures and understand the impact of changing assumptions. So with that in mind, let's take a look at General Electric. I have their 10K here for 2023. I've picked General Electric because they have a large defined benefit plan, a deficit, and some interesting changes in assumptions. So let's start with the plan's funded status. What I'm going to look at is 2022 and just the principal pension, because they're kind of some big juicy numbers and some interesting changes and assumptions that we can deal with. This is the end of 2023's 10K, so you can certainly roll it forward and look at the other numbers yourself, but these have some quite juicy changes in there, as I say. Now, I've taken those basic reconciliations of the obligations and plan assets and put them into a pro forma, as you can see over on the left. And we're going to use that along with a couple of other notes to construct the income statement and OCI. And that is certainly something you still need to be able to do at level 2 in 2024. Go through the notes and tell me of all the costs of this plan, which go to the income statement, which go to OCI. So let's do exactly that. Focusing on my pro forma, we start with an obligation of 72,299. We have a current service cost of 221. Under US GAAP and IFRS, that current service cost of 221 is part of the income statement expense. Moving down the reconciliation, we have 2069 as interest cost. Under US GAAP, that 2069 is part of the income statement expense. If this were IFRS, it would be netted against return on assets, both calculated using the discount rate. You see it on one line. Under US GAAP, you see 2069 as the cost, and then we would see separately an expected return on plan assets. We'll have to go to another bit of the disclosures to find that. But continuing with the obligation, we've got the opening, the service cost, the interest cost, participant contributions, 14 paid by employees. That will increase our obligation. We owe it back to them. And increase our plan assets. You can see down here, 14. It's a wash. It's not part of the cost of the plan. It doesn't go to the income statement or OCI. Then the big number, the reason I've really chosen these disclosures to look at. 17,281 there in parentheses in my pro forma. Let's get back into the GE notes, and we can see it right here. 17,281. It is in parentheses, which means it's an actuarial gain. We have a note. It says A. Let's go down to note A. Not sure if the font's big enough for you to read on the screen, but it says primarily due to impact of discount rates. It's in parentheses here. It is reducing the benefit obligation. What would we need to do to a discount rate to reduce the obligation? The obligation is the PV of all of our future payments. Well, if it's been reduced, it must be because the actuary increased the discount rate. And if we scroll up in the disclosures, we can see exactly that happening. In 2021, last year compared to the year I'm looking at, for the principal pension, discount rate of 2.94. This year, in our principal pension, 5.53. That is a hike of 259 basis points. Increase the interest rate, or rather the discount rate, you decrease the obligation. That's what's led to that massive number, that 17,281 that we see in this reconciliation of the obligation. Where does it go? Well, it is part of the cost of the plan for the year, but because it's an actuarial change, it goes to OCI. Our hope is in the long run, all of these actuarial gains and losses will net out to zero. It's in parentheses there because it's a gain. At the top here, when we're looking at income statement and OCI in these pro formas, positive numbers are expenses. So in parentheses here, that is reducing the expense because it's a gain. Why a gain? Because we reduced the obligation. And then finally, in this reconciliation of the obligation, we have the 3731 benefits paid. Again, not part of the cost. It reduces the obligation because it's paid. It also reduces our plan assets because we use the assets to pay it. So the 3731 comes out of the obligation and the assets. It's a wash. It's not part of the cost. That deals with all the numbers from the obligation. What about the plan assets? Starts at 6990. So we brought that into our pro forma. And then we have the other big interesting number from this year. The other reason I chose this year, we have an actual gain or loss on plan assets. And because it's in parentheses, it is a loss of 12,605 in there. Now, where does that go? Does it go to the income statement or OCI? Well, it doesn't go directly into either. To find out what happens to it, we need to look at a different disclosure. This is our funded status. If we roll up, we can see what they put into the income statement and into OCI, or the income statement primarily on this disclosure. And as they should under US GAAP, What GE put into their income statement was not that actual loss on assets, but instead the expected return. What is the expected return, you may ask? It's a good question. That is the return the actuary expected our assets to generate. Here, it was 3142. Again, be careful. We're in an expense disclosure here. So anything in parentheses is reducing that expense. It is income. So the actuary expected 3142 of income. That's what they took to the income statement. Let's put it into hours. Again, negative because it's reducing the expense. But why 3142? Let's take a look at the disclosures, see if we can find out. If we scroll back through the status, we're told down here we have some assumptions that are being used. Actuarial basis, yep, we know various assumptions, yet discount rate we've talked about, compensation assumptions we haven't talked about yet, and expected return on assets and mortality rates. The expected return on assets is an assumption the actuary will give us. We scroll down and look at the plan assets. We can see their breakdown, and in the detail up here in this paragraph, you should be able to pick out an assumption of a long-term expected return of 7%. The actuary has used that and the asset balances throughout the year to come up with that expected return of 3142. Back to the funded status. Dealt with the 12605. Employer contributions of 325. That's money paid by GE to the pension plan. Not part of the cost, that's the payment of the cost. So we don't need to stress about that for the income statement or OCI. And the participant contributions and the benefits paid, we already dealt with and talked about from the obligation. So that deals with everything in our obligation and assets. Let's see where it leaves us. Well, at the start of the year, we had a benefit obligation of 72,299, plan assets of 6990. That means on January the 1st, we had a deficit of 11,309. That's the difference between the 72 and the 60. By the end of the year, December 31, that was down to 8598. And you can see that, the funded status in GE's disclosures. So you need to be able to do that, pick that disclosure apart and understand where the numbers are going. But we haven't quite finished the income statement and OCI yet. What have we got in the income statement? Well, the 221, 2069, 3142, that's fine. We've got a bit of amortization missing. OCI, we've got the actuarial loss. But look at this big number we need here. Expected versus actual return on plan assets. Look what we've done so far. We've put a return of 3142 into the income statement. But we know, actually, we lost 12,605. If we leave it like that, we are lying in the accounts. 3142 positive, when actually we lost 12,605, that is a difference of 15,747. That is another actuarial adjustment that we put into OCI. This time, it is a loss. We put a gain of 3142 into the income statement. The truth was we lost 12,605. We need to put a loss in OCI of 15,747. If we do that, together, the income statement of 3142 and the OCI of 15,747 net out to the true figure of 12,605. That leaves only the amortization. This, remember, is General Electric. As we've said, we're using US GAAP. And the most common treatment for actuarial gains and losses under US GAAP is to take them directly to OCI, as we have here, and then gradually, typically over the remaining service life of employees, amortize them back into the income statement. To find out how much amortization they charge, let's go back up to our expense disclosure. And for 2022 in the principal pension column, here we go. Amortization of net losses, 1422. amortization of prior service costs, 5. Neither is in parentheses, so they are costs. So from prior years into our pro forma, we can show an expense from amortization of 1422 from actuarial losses and from prior service costs 5. If this were IFRS, prior service costs would have gone directly to the income statement. Now, where did they come from? We've just said they came from OCI. So if you're putting that amortization into the income statement, you must remove it from OCI. Remove it from OCI. This is a wash. We're just recycling. Something that was sat in OCI is now in the income statement. And we're done. Let's total everything up just to make sure it looks logical. Income statement expense is 575. Can we find that in the disclosures? It's staring us in the face right here. That's the 575. OCI, 2961. It's in parentheses. That's an overall credit. Can we find that in the disclosures? Well, let's scroll back down. Past our funded status, past the assumptions and the assets we looked at earlier. And we get a disclosure on what's gone to comprehensive income. We are in still the same year we're looking at, 2022, the principal pension. Total charges or changes rather in comprehensive loss or income. There you go, 2960. We seem to have picked up a 1 difference there in rounding, but that's the 2960 that we are looking at. Tremendous. So we know how to pick apart a set of disclosures. We know where to find the key numbers. And we know how to put them and split them into the income statement and into OCI. Now, if you're a veteran of 2023, you're probably itching to go further. So let me just take an extra minute to say, look, you might be thinking, surely, Richie, we want to go on and say some interesting stuff about the movement in the fund, the contributions, and these total expenses. And I would agree. This is not strictly necessary anymore, but I think it's useful to test your understanding of what's happening here. Look at what happened. We went from January the 1st, a deficit of 11,309, to December 31st, a deficit of 8,598. That is an improvement. In the deficit of 2,711, the deficit decreased. That was despite GE only making contributions of 325. Well, if their pension deficit improved by a massive 2,711, despite them only paying 325, the cost of the plan must have actually been not a cost but income of 2,386. If you pay 325 and it improves by 2,711, somehow there was a negative cost to that plan of 2,386. That should be what we're putting through our accounts for the principal pension plan in 2022. Let's see if we have. Well, there are only 2 places where we put costs: the income statement and OCI. 2961 as a credit, 575 expense in the income statement. If you net those 2 off, we do indeed get 2,386. The total cost, or in this case, income from the pension plan, can we find that in the disclosures finally? Well, there we are. The cost or income, in parentheses, it's income, of the plan for the year, 2,385. I got 2,386. That's that 1 of rounding we picked up somewhere along the way. And that's it. My intention here, first of all, to point out that defined benefit plans are still in the curriculum, albeit scaled right down. Secondly, can you pick apart a set of disclosures, find the assumptions, what's changed, and what the impact of that change is going to be on your obligation and your pension cost?
Okay, not a lot of questions this week. Should be able to get through this quickly. Question is not directly about the curriculum or preparation strategy, but is definitely necessary to push my exam preparation forward. So I find it worth asking you here. I've made many sacrifices during my level 1 preparation. Now I find myself all alone in life with nobody to share a few nice moments with throughout the day. I cut off contact with negative people last year. Well, that's always a good thing. It doesn't matter if you're alone. It would be worse to be around negative people. We drift in the direction of those we associate with. And if they were negative people, you risk becoming one of those yourself. So that is never a bad thing. Cut off contact with negative people last year. Some others distance themselves out of envy. Well, you don't want to be around them either. I know some people get a sense of self-satisfaction by seeing others either fail or not succeed or just go sideways. And then they feel sort of negative feelings when they see others succeeding and surpassing them. And they don't want to be around you. They want to blame you as opposed to doing anything about their own lives. Why do you want to be around people who feel good as they're getting further than you are? You don't want that either. That's negative too. I think you made the right choice. I live alone, away from my family, and this feeling of loneliness, which is turning into depression, is affecting my preparations as well as my mental and emotional health. Purchased the full access package almost a month ago, but I've hardly studied for 5-6 days yet. Chose to address this question to you for some obvious reasons. Hope to hear from you how to overcome this situation. I did the same thing many years ago. I simply just stopped associating with the group of people that I used to associate with, and that was it. It was a decision that I felt was long coming, so I simply stopped, and nobody called me. So, I sort of had it easy on that one. Couple of suggestions. Number one, is there a CFA society in your city? If there is, join it. They have meetings. Go to them. It's a social network. There's one thing you could do right away. Number two, get a dog. Get a dog. A dog gets you out of the house, and as you walk around the neighborhood, you'll meet other people with dogs. That's how you meet people. And you'll be out there 2-3 times a day. And if you walk in the morning, you'll meet a certain group of people. If you walk in the afternoon, you'll meet a different group of people. If you walk at night, you'll meet a different group of people, all with dogs. Dog owners are not bad people. Otherwise, they wouldn't own dogs. They'd own cats or pit bulls. Sorry for all the pit bull owners out there, but not only that, the dog will become your best friend. It's almost impossible to be lonely with a dog. A dog, after a while, molds its behavior to you. That's why they're called man's best friend. They do really become your best friend. They anticipate. They know when you're happy. They know when you're angry. They know when you're sad. They know how to respond to you. It's I think almost impossible to be depressed around a puppy. And that thing will wiggle its way into your heart, and then that'll be it. That's sort of the warning I got to give anybody who wants a dog, is once they wiggle their way in there, that's it. You're hooked, and that dog becomes everything to you. It is hard to be depressed. It is hard to be unhappy with a dog around, and it's hard to be lonely with a dog around, because that dog gets you out there. And you meet other dog people. You go to the dog park and there's a whole bunch of people there, right? There you go. CFA Society, and get yourself a dog. It doesn't have to be a big dog. It could be a little dog if you don't want the responsibility of long walks. The smaller the dog, the shorter the walk, the less work it is. But, get yourself a dog. Problem solved. Look at that. Where's the next question? Studying for level 1, progressing through fixed income and derivatives readings, struggling in the modules relating to bond yields or bond types of yields, interest rate risk, Macaulay duration. That one is fixed income risk and return. My post-reading practice scores are 50-60%. Question is, should I move on to complete remaining readings? Yes, definitely move on. Definitely move on. And tackle this weakness first, or move ahead and address weakness during a revision month. Well, you have office hours coming up, and there are office hours for fixed income. So you're not getting it. You're not quite getting it. You must have questions. You must have questions about, well, how come, why is this, why is that? Can you explain this in a different way? Could you explain that in a different way? That's what office hours are for, right? Show up to office hours. Save your frustration for office hours. Things that you can't quite figure out. Mental blocks that you're having where you're saying, okay, well, it's not like I can't figure it out. I just don't know what it is I'm missing. Or why it is I can't get past something. Maybe it's a mental block. Maybe you're making it out to be far more difficult than it really is, because we know that duration, if we look at the price yield curve and we draw, and let's say this is where the yield is, we know that this is PV naught. You can raise prices and lower prices, and you'll have different bond prices. I think we understand that, right? You lower the price, the yield, the bond goes up. You raise the yield, the price goes down. We'll call this PV minus and PV plus. And if we draw a tangent line here, the question about duration, being that it's a sensitivity, is how much does PV naught change from this point? Well, it changes by the slope of the line. So it is the slope, and if we want a sensitivity, we just divide it by the starting position. That's grade 9 stuff. What is the slope of this line? Well, it's rise over run. Rise over run. Over, we'll call that PV naught, which is P naught here. Well, what's the rise? What's the run? So what's the rise? PV minus PV plus. What is the run? Well, it's the change in yield, but it's, we did it twice, right? Change in yield this way, changing, so it's 2y over PV naught. Well, let's get rid of that. Multiply the numerator and the denominator by both PV naught. What are we going to get? PV minus PV plus over 2 times the change in yield times PV naught. Well, look at that. There's approximate modified duration, and all it is the slope of the line over the initial price. Boom, that's it. It's not that complicated. So here is our function, which is a convex curve. So right away we know bonds must have convexity, right? Because it's a convex function. It is differentiable all along the function, which means if we take the first derivative of that line with respect to y, right? It's the derivative with respect to y, you will get duration, you will get a sensitivity. Any derivative is a rate of change, right? A derivative is a rate of change, you know that. So you'll get the percentage change in the price of the bond. And it is just the slope over the initial condition. The slope is rise over run, the rise, the run, there you go. It's grade 9 math. You've seen this in grade 9, right? So just you may be making it far more complicated than what it really is. But I would, get your questions, whatever questions you have. I would look at the office hour schedule. I would have my questions ready, and I would attend. I think that's it. If I fail level 3, is there any strategy to restart this exam in the coming August? Well, of course there is. I put a video out on Saturday. Link is in the description box. And that wraps it up.